Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here. I want to thank the Military Cyber Professionals Association for giving me the honor of coming to talk to you today about something that I think is very important. I am, as Chick mentioned, I am an advisor, an unpaid advisor to the MCPA, and I do believe in MCPA's mission of developing leaders for the future and investing in the future. So I think it's a very important and worthwhile association, and I'm happy to support it. I'd like to start out by saying that I joined Palo Alto Networks as the Federal Chief Security Officer a little over 2 years ago. And that was after a 35-year career in the U.S. military. Most of that time that I spent in the military was in airborne, ranger, and special operations assignments and information warfare. But the last 10 years was all cyber operations, cyber strategy, cyber policy, interagency and international coordination on cyber issues. And so I thought, just to provide some context for what I'm going to talk to you about today and why I think the way that I do, I want to dig in a little bit deeper to that last 10 years. Because I think it was kind of unusual to have those assignments at the time. Hopefully, they're becoming a little bit more usual. And I hope that we are seriously investing in senior leaders in the Army and in the other services to get the kind of experience that I was lucky enough to get when I was in those last 10 years of my career. So to dig a little bit deeper, in 2006, I commanded an Army organization before Army Cyber Command that was responsible for protecting the Army's networks around the world. And I had 6 regional computer emergency response teams, or CERTs, that were positioned around the globe. And I also commanded the global CERT that was at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. In 2008, as a 1-star, my first 1-star position, I was the leader of a joint task force. And the joint task force mission was to direct the operations and defense of all DoD's networks. So you're talking about 15,000 enclaves in, I think it was about 90 countries around the world, 5 million users, 7 million IT devices at the time, and Lord only knows how many OT devices and systems that were connected to that environment. Very tough mission. And about a month into that assignment, we had a near catastrophe in the U.S. military. We found malicious software in some of our most sensitive networks. I thought I was going to be fired. So I set up a cot in my office, and I lived out of my office for the next several months while we cleaned up that mess and, remediated the situation. And it got everyone's attention, from the Secretary of Defense on down and even beyond DoD. It was the operation was called Buckshot Yankee, and while some of it's classified, there are many parts of it that are not classified, but it was a big wake-up call for DoD. And I believe, at least in my view, that was the straw that broke the camel's back in the decision to create U.S. Cyber Command. And I had the opportunity then to become the first Director of Current Operations at U.S. Cyber Command and help build the Cyber Command's Joint Operations Center, which became one of the 6 at the time, one of the 6 federal cyber centers. So tremendous experience doing that, a lot of lessons learned, most of them very painful, as some of you who served with me there know. My next job as a 2-star was to become the first senior military cyber advisor at the Pentagon. We created that job in order to take the operational experience and lessons that I had learned in what I just described to you and bring them to the policy and strategy makers in the Pentagon. And so I did that starting in 2012, and then the last year and a half, I was appointed as the acting Deputy Assistant Secretary for Cyber Policy, which is normally a civilian job. That's why I was the acting NASD, but the civilian who held that job got promoted, and so I was put in that position for a year and a half. So, fascinating career, and I hope it becomes more normal, becomes normalized. I know we've been through, I think General Wilson, who I think is going to be coming here, is now the 3rd senior military cyber advisor at the Pentagon. So that experience is I wanted to provide that to you to give context to what I'm going to say today. And it's not just that experience, the last 10 years that I served in the U.S. military. It's also the last 2 years that I've served at Palo Alto Networks. Now, my role at Palo Alto Networks is to create trusted advisory relationships at senior levels, C-suite and boardroom levels, not only in the federal sector, but I'm also the sponsor for 15 of our global accounts across all the verticals: oil and natural gas, pharmaceutical, retail, banking, you name it. And I also, because of my role in the Pentagon, I had developed a lot of international contacts in that role. So I also have an international role with Palo Alto Networks, and that puts me traveling to many different countries and in order to do the same thing: create trusted advisory relationships, become an advisory resource to organizations, both public and private sector. And then the other thing I do in this role is engage in thought leadership type activities like this one. So, all right, that's the background. What I want to talk to you about today is cybersecurity innovation. And like the title here says, I'm going to talk first about what I see as the problem with cybersecurity and the cybersecurity industry in general, before I talk about what I see as potential solutions to it. Solutions through innovation. So here's what I see as the problem today. And I know that there's a lot of nuance to this, but I'll make a generalization here if you'll allow me. My generalization is that the world of technology, and I include information technology, operational technology, and as those two can increasingly connect to each other in the Internet of Things, that's what I call the world of technology. It's moving in one direction, and the world of the security that's designed to protect that is moving in exactly the opposite direction. And the problem is growing. It's not getting better, it's growing. And this problem creates a tremendous advantage for the attacker over the defender. So we need to fix this problem if we're ever going to level the playing field and create a more balanced approach between offense and defense. So in my view, in that 10-year history in the military and in the last 2 years in the private sector, I've noticed what I'll call the following 6 trends that illustrate the direction that I believe the world of technology is moving in. First of all, things in this world are becoming simpler to understand and easier to do. Just look at your smartphone and apps as an example. Second, things are becoming more and more convenient. We'll take one of those apps, for example, Uber. Punch a button, get a car. The third trend, it's taking fewer and fewer people to do more and more things. It's a very interesting dynamic. Fourth, the reason that this is happening is because in this world, things are designed from the beginning to connect with one another. They're natively integrated to interact with other things. So in the example of Uber, you're connecting a car, a driver, a customer, GPS, credit card information, even, customer feedback, all in one application that's all, the fifth trend, it's all automated. And automation is something that this world leverages significantly. And then the final thing that is, at least in my observation, that's happening in this world is that things are designed to proactively solve problems. So that's the world of information technology, operational technology, and IoT. As a result of that, as a result of these trends are driving the movement of that world to mobile, virtual, cloud, and even IoT itself. Those trends are moving things in that direction. And these trends are generating requirements that are driving innovation in that world. And as a result of this, I know there's some hiccups, there's always some glitches, but in general, The user or operator experience in this world is increasingly fused, smooth, and it's pleasant. So that's the world of technology. Now let's talk about the world of the security designed to protect that technology. Instead of things becoming simpler to understand and easier to use, things are becoming more and more difficult to understand and use in the world of security. Instead of becoming more convenient, they're becoming more complicated. You can take a look at everything from password complexity to the orchestration of security products in a network environment. It's extremely complex, and it's growing even more and more complex every day. Instead of taking fewer people to do more things, it's requiring more and more people to do more and more things. I don't know of a single organization, either in government or in the private sector, that has told me, I've got enough people to do what I need to do. They all need more. By some accounts, by 2020, there's going to be a shortage of cybersecurity professionals to the tune of about 1.5 million. There's no way to out-people the problem in that world on the left-hand side. Instead of being designed, in a world of connectivity and being natively designed to work together, over here in the world of cybersecurity, things are isolated and they're in stovepipes. And if I could make there's a series of isolated point products that are designed to solve one particular problem in your network environment. Usually it's associated around the threat kill chain, going by Lockheed Martin terminology, or the threat life cycle by Gartner terminology. If I could compare cybersecurity to automobiles, this is kind of what I see happening on the left-hand side. You got a bunch of cybersecurity or defenders, cybersecurity professionals, who are going to 100 different auto parts stores and buying parts and bringing them back and trying to build a car, instead of going to a car dealership and buying a car. That's what's happening in every organization that I've seen, and they all want to get out of that mode. Instead of things being more and more automated, and on the left-hand side, we are still living in a mostly manual reaction mode based on human decision-making. And I got news for you. It's not just the world of technology that's moving in a more automated direction, it's also the world of the cyber threats that are moving in a more automated direction. And you can't use human decision-making and manual response to get ahead of that threat. And then finally, instead of being designed to proactively solve problems, the world of cybersecurity is still focused largely on reacting to a problem after it's already occurred. And I'll be the first to admit, detection and response and reconstitution and resilience, they're all part of you have to have those in a good comprehensive strategy. But if you give up on a prevention-first mindset, I think that's a big mistake. Because I believe you can prevent the vast majority of the incidents that we're dealing with today. I think they're totally preventable. In fact, in my 10 years of experience in the cyber world of the U.S. military, there wasn't a single event that wasn't totally preventable. Going back to that, Operation Buckshot Yankee, that was just poor standards and discipline we plugged in removable media into the wrong, it moved in between systems of different classifications, and we propagated that problem. So I think that if you're in the cybersecurity world and you say, forget about it, you're never going to stop, your best bet is to detect it and then respond to it quickly. I say you've lost a chance to wipe the bulk of the noise from the radar screen so that you can use your limited resources on those things that are most important. Not that you can prevent everything, but you can sure prevent most of it. So that's what's going on in that world. And instead of the consequences of what's happening in the world of technology, these trends on the left-hand side are causing the world of cybersecurity to be greatly challenged, chasing this world into the environment of mobile, virtual cloud. And this, on the left-hand side, the bulk of the cybersecurity industry has its head in the sand with regard to IoT. The trends that are driving innovation requirements here These trends on the left are actually magnifying the problem. And they're driving this world on the left-hand side further and further away in the opposite direction. And the user or operator experience in the world of cybersecurity is piecemeal, it's filled with friction, and it's downright overwhelming and painful. I know because I've lived it for the last 12 years of my life. And those of you who are with me, you feel like this. This is what the typical cybersecurity professional feels like today. So this is not a good place to be in. Not a good place at all. In my view, the world of cybersecurity needs to make a U-turn and align to the trends that you're seeing in the world of technology. Now, how do you do that? You know, that's easy to say, difficult to do. I think that the solution is at 4 levels of integration. And I'm going to talk about each one of these levels. But the 4 levels of integration, if we can harness these 4 levels, I believe we can return a more balanced approach between offense and defense, and we can give the cybersecurity and defender community an equal footing. But you have to do these 4 things. So the first level is about a platform approach. A lot of people use that term. Let me explain what I mean by a platform approach. A platform approach puts visibility and security control capabilities at each point along the threat kill chain or threat lifecycle. Each of those steps in the lifecycle, you have to be able to see and stop in order for it to be effective. And it has to be automated. It has to be automated. And this is basically the first evolution in security. A lot of companies out there will tell you they use a platform approach. Ask them what they mean by that. At my company, we mean exactly what I said, putting visibility and security controls at each point along the kill chain in an automated fashion. That's what we mean. Now, it's not easy to do that. Let's talk about the life cycle, the kill chain. So these are the basic steps, and there are different ways to characterize this. I just used this one. These are the basic steps that any cyber actor or organization has to go through in order to accomplish their objective, regardless of whether it's for espionage purposes, for activism, for crime, for cyber warfare. It doesn't matter. It's a different effect. It's a different, outcome. But the steps remain virtually the same. They don't always have to happen in that order that I put up here, but they usually do follow that order. And I know because one of the smartest things the U.S. military did, and the U.S. military and intelligence community did, was it began to leverage their offense to inform the defense. And this is how we do it. So I'm telling you, regardless of where you are in the spectrum, these steps apply. And the basic steps, when you put the details behind them, that becomes a playbook. And there are only a certain number of playbooks that are in use around the world by all these different types of adversaries. I don't know what the number is, but it's not millions. It's probably in the hundreds to thousands of playbooks. That's a manageable number. But you've got to be able to see and stop activity along that kill chain. And by doing that, you're able to prevent a successful attack. Success being this last set of outcomes. It doesn't mean stopping them from doing the steps. That's where you got to catch them, because they're very difficult to prevent those. But you can prevent the successful attack, the last outcome, if you're able to do what I just described. For Palo Alto Networks, what does that mean? Prevention, what does it mean? It means you have to have complete visibility in all environments across the kill chain. You have to reduce the attack surface by determining what's most important to your organization, to your business, or to your mission, mapping that to your network environment, including the systems, the data, the networks, and even the people in many cases, because there's an insider threat involved in that kill chain as well. They just don't need to do the reconnaissance and probing because they're already in. Then you have to prevent everything that's known to be bad. And finally, you have to determine things that are unknown very quickly and create a security control for that. You have to be able to see suspicious behavior, make a determination very, very quickly, and then use the resulting security control in order to push that out to the appropriate element of your environment in order to stop. And what this is turning unknowns into knowns very quickly. That's how we see the security framework for prevention. It takes a lot of different capabilities to do what I just described very well. In each of those categories, there are different types of capabilities. And here's the problem. I talked about the cybersecurity community having a bunch of isolated point products. These are the point products that are out there. And they do different functions that are associated with the kill chain. They're normally not focused on prevention. They're normally focused on response after something bad has happened, but they have to talk to each other. They have to be designed from the beginning to be natively integrated across all of these different things if you're going to be able to do those things that actually prevent. So as an example, if you are able to prevent known malware, but it doesn't apply to all applications, it doesn't apply to encrypted traffic, it doesn't apply in the cloud, and it has no connection with being able to do these type of things in order to detect very quickly suspicious behavior and make a determination that it is a threat. If you can't do that, if those capabilities are not communicating across each other, you're not going to be successful. You're going to be able to, an adversary is going to be able to just change that one feature and reuse the rest of the playbook and come at you again. And they do that in an automated way. That's called polymorphic malicious software, where a detection capability for one of those features is detected by a cybersecurity professional in the environment, but it doesn't communicate the rest of that playbook to other portions of the environment. And therefore, it's very easy for an adversary to get around that one particular point defense. The second level of integration where we need innovation is in what I'll call deep technical partnerships. Because, in my view, no single organization, public or private, can do this successfully across all those environments. And the kill chain, the life cycle, different parts of those life cycle, the playbooks, occur in different environments. And so you need deep technical partnerships with companies who are industry leaders at doing certain things in those different environments. At Palo Alto Networks, we rely on these partnerships and we engineer solutions. We build technically engineered solutions so that their product and our product work together, and we build it so that it's designed to work together so you don't have to figure out how to do it. You don't have to go to two different auto parts stores to buy a bunch of parts and try to figure out how to make a car out of it. As an example, this is just the example for my company. Many other companies will tell you the same thing. In order for us to do what we do, these are the deep technical partnerships that we have in our environment. We engineer these solutions so our clients don't have to do that, which means it requires fewer people to do more things. It makes it easier and more convenient. It's automated, and it's designed to prevent. So it's by doing this, you're aligning to those trends that I described in the world of technology. So for us to be able to do what we do, traditionally we started as a firewall company, a physical firewall company. We're now a platform company. So we got network, endpoint, cloud. We provide protection, and all of that feeds itself. All of that is interconnected, and it feeds itself, and it does that based on these partnerships. For us to do what we are able to do physically with our firewalls in a virtual environment, we've engineered a solution with VMware to be able to operate the same security controls in a virtual environment that we do in a physical environment. For us to be able to do what we do in the cloud, whether you're talking public, private, hybrid, or even SaaS, we engineer our solutions with Microsoft and Amazon to be able to do it in Azure and AWS. For us to be able to do what we do at the endpoint, we engineer solutions with Proofpoint and Taney to be able to do that. Because, as I mentioned, the challenge is that kill chain or that life cycle, those steps occur in different places in this environment. And so if you want to be able to have consistency across all these environments, whether you're talking about physical or virtual, whether you're talking about on-prem or cloud, any of the types of clouds, whether you're talking about the edge or data centers or down at the endpoint, even including IoT devices. You have to be able to do these four functions consistently across all those environments, and they have to be natively integrated so that when you detect one thing, one part of a playbook, you can inform the rest of the environments in an automated fashion, and you can push prevention controls down in a very quick amount of time. In my company, what do I mean by quick? Every 5 minutes to our 43.5 thousand customers around the world in 150 countries, every 5 minutes we're doing that analytic work to push security controls in an automated fashion to our clients worldwide. Now, you say 5 minutes isn't fast enough. I would contend that if every cyber threat has got to step through that kill chain, it takes time to step through that kill chain. If you want to be stealthy, it can take months to get to the end objective. So I think 5 minutes is pretty good. Okay, this is the third level of integration, and this is just what's just now beginning to happen across the industry. I think this will be a major disruption across the cybersecurity industry. My company believes it will be because we're investing in this. And this one is open source integration, so taking application program interface capabilities and opening them up so that companies who can do innovative things with data, with threat telemetry, are able to plug in to that ecosystem like an app would. And what do I mean by that? This requires a change in an evolution in the entire platform concept. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make cybersecurity products as easy, as convenient, requiring fewer people, automating it, and designing it for prevention the same way you would in an add to cart type of concept. For my company, this is how we're doing it. So we're already in network, endpoint, and cloud capabilities. Like I said, 150 countries around the world, almost 44,000 clients. So we've got a lot of threat telemetry based on being there, based on having visibility and security control enforcement points in all those places. We get a lot of threat telemetry that comes into our cloud. That's indicators of compromise, it's contextual information. That's the cloud that drives I told you, every 5 minutes, we're able to look at what's happening, identify suspicious behavior, turn an unknown into a known threat, and push the security control out automatically. That's what's happening in that cloud. But we built our own applications to ride on top of that telemetry. Wildfire is our threat intelligence cloud, URL filtering, and threat prevention were the things that we already had done. Autofocus is another one that we did in order to support hunting capabilities. But what we're talking about doing now is opening up an API layer on top of that so that other companies, third parties, other companies, your own in-house apps can connect through the API to that telemetry and do interesting things with it. I think this is going to change the whole dynamic because now what you're talking about doing is essentially, you go to the RSA convention and you look at the thousands of vendors on the floor and you see one, you say, I like what you're able to do. How do I consume that product? And what do they tell you? Well, you got to deploy me everywhere in your environment for me to be able to do that. This is a different concept. It says, now, all you got to do is write an app to our cloud. And the enforcement points are already built in if the client has Palo Alto networks. There are only a couple of companies that are big enough and have this type of threat telemetry to be able to do this. But I think that's what's going to happen. Hopefully we'll be leading the way on it. These are the companies that have already signed up to do that, to write apps on our cloud so that they don't have to deploy stuff. They just write an app. And if the consumer likes what they're getting, just like on your iPhone, you turn the app on. If you don't like it, you pay for what you use. And if you don't like it, you turn it off. You'll notice there are some competitors up here of ours that are interested in writing an app to our application framework in order to be able to leverage our enforcement and crunch on our threat telemetry. So I think that, a measure of success for this concept will be that this list continues to grow and will include competitors. We also partnered with two well-known venture capitalist firms, Sequoia and Greylock Partners, to create a $20 million fund in order to help startups do the very same thing, to write an app to our framework. So we want to drive innovation, especially in the startup industry. And my thinking is that this type of a concept will spur innovation in ways that we can't even think of yet. But I think that it's important to also include the startups in this. Okay, the final layer of integration that I believe requires innovation, because even if you can do all those things that I described in the other three layers, I don't believe that's sufficient. I don't believe any single organization has the visibility and the abilities to take care of the problem. I think information sharing is absolutely critical to be able to do that. So sharing threat information through standardized and automated means is the key to an ecosystem that can enable all those other three levels of integration. As an example, my company, Palo Alto Networks, we have information sharing partnerships with, FSISAC, the DIB program, Homeland Security CISP and Automated Indicator Sharing Program, the FBI, international organizations, NATO and Interpol, and even one that's just totally commercial, which is a pretty interesting concept in the Cyber Threat Alliance. The concept here is that even though we have a significant view of the world in 150 countries through our, almost 44,000 clients, we still can't see everything that's over the horizon. And by establishing information sharing partnerships, this gives you an over-the-horizon view so that when any of those organizations see something happening somewhere in the corner of the globe, they can share it and everybody benefits from that information if they consume it, if they can consume it and push security controls out. I want to talk a little bit more about the Cyber Threat Alliance. How many of you have heard of the Cyber Threat Alliance? Okay, this was an alliance held together by a bunch of non-disclosure agreements for a couple of years. It's been in existence now. The alliance has been in existence, I think, for going on 4 years. Initially held together by non-disclosure agreements, an agreement at the CEO level that the companies involved in this alliance, which you can see here, would treat cyber threat intelligence as a public good instead of a private commodity. So the idea, and it took a while. This is a big deal to get the CEO of a company to agree that we're not going to compete about the intelligence. We're going to compete about what we do with the intelligence, and we're going to use that intelligence in order to drive our whatever it is that we do. So Palo Alto Networks, Symantec, Fortinet, Cisco, Checkpoint, and Intel Security, which is now McAfee, or the founding members, and then you can see some of the other contributing members. And I believe this is going to grow. I believe that this alliance is going to grow. Last February at RSA, we made a couple of announcements about this. We announced that instead of being held together by a non-disclosure agreement, the Cyber Threat Alliance would become a 501(c) nonprofit organization. We hired a president for the, separate from the contributing organizations. We hired a president, it's Michael Daniel, the former cybersecurity coordinator for the Obama administration. And we announced that we did two major things. The problem was Well, three major things. First of all, we determined what type of information, we defined what kind of information would be shared. We steered clear of PII and content and intellectual property and personal health information. That's not the type of information, because that creates all kinds of privacy and liability issues. What we do focus on are indicators of compromise and contextual information around the kill chain or life cycle. So that was the first, big change. The second big change was we created a standardized format so that all these companies sharing information could do it in the same language. We used the Styx taxi as a base for that, but we called it down to a manageable number of fields, because Styx taxi is, thousands of fields. So we took what we thought were the most important associated with the type of information that I just described. And the third major development was we created an automated platform to ingest the information and to push out the resulting security control. So, solving the problem that many organizations who have had experience in threat intelligence and information sharing is, if it's manual, if it's based on manual actions and voluntary measures, it's not going to work. It's not going to be sufficient to the scale and scope of the threat. So, by doing that, by using those 4 levels of integration and innovating within those levels, I believe that we can do this. I believe we can take the cybersecurity industry in a U-turn direction and align with these things that these are not going to change. The world of technology is not going to change. It's an azimuth that's been set, and there's no going back. So rather than moving in the opposite direction in each one of them, we do need to make a U-turn so that we make things easier to understand, easier to implement, that we make things more convenient for the cybersecurity professionals and organizations, that we require fewer people to do more things rather than more and more people, because we will never out-people our way out of this problem. We design all of these capabilities to be connected and inform each other so that it's natively integrated, instead of a bunch of point products that you as a cybersecurity professional have to figure out how to make it work together, and it takes more people, time, and money to be able to do that. It's much more automated rather than relying on, manual response and human decision making. You're leveraging automation in ways that not just the world of technology is moving in, but the world of the cyber threat is moving in a much more highly automated way. If you thought, when I say cyber threat, I know a lot of people like me had the image was person in a hoodie, hunched over a laptop, up to some type of nefarious activity. That is not what's going on in the cyber threat world. It is an extremely sophisticated world. It leverages automation. It leverages tool and information sharing in ways that the defender community doesn't. And it even has sophisticated underground marketing and customer support for tools and stuff that if you want to break the law, you can rent stuff that can enable you to do it in a very highly automated way. And it even has victim support. So for victims of ransomware, if you don't know how to pay the ransom in Bitcoin, there's a 1-800 number to call that will walk you through the process to make it easy for the victim. That's what's going on in the world of the threat community. So the world of the cybersecurity community needs to get on board and move in that direction through these 4 levels of innovative information linkage and integration. So at this point, I'll stop and I'll pause for questions, and I'll thank Joe and Carmine for once again for having me come and letting me participate in this. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.